Good morning. This is Kiran Rai here reporting for the Frontline. Today we have an exclusive with Muhammed Ali's daughter, Rasheda Ali. We're going to be speaking all about the legacy of her father and at the same time all the great stuff as being one of the best boxers, well, the most gracious boxer of all time. Rasheda's on the other line. Rasheda, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your time.
I'm honored.
Thank you. So, Rashida, I want to get into this interview. In terms of your father, Muhammad Ali, he's done, some amazing stuff in terms of being a boxer, philanthropist, a businessman, etc. What's your perspective on your father's legacy, all the stuff that he's achieved, etc. What do you see as a sort of a character as your father?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me on today and for featuring my dad today.
Sure.
I always really enjoy talking about him and what he meant, not just to us,
Sure.
the kids, but also to the whole world. I believe my dad's characteristic, even when he was 12 years old, as a little boy from Louisville, Kentucky, he always felt like he wanted to give back to his community. And when he was training at 12 years old with his brother, my uncle Rahman, Rock would throw rocks literally at my dad so my dad can kind of try to train as a boxer.
Sure.
And to try to avoid and use his head movement as if he were in a boxing ring. And when he would do those exercises with his brother, he told him, because he didn't know he would be good at boxing, he told him, if I were ever to be a professional boxer or if I were ever to get famous, I want to help. And I was at 12 years old. So my dad had it genuinely in him to help other people, even before he knew he was going to be good at boxing.
So in other words, he was 10 years ahead of his game, basically. He was 10 years ahead.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he knew as a person, whatever he did in life, he was going to give back to his people. And that's exactly what he did.
Now, in terms of what you hope that people could wish for in terms of your father's legacy, because people see Muhammad Ali as a great boxer, but at home, you and Hannah, you and your family, you really know Muhammad Ali. We see Muhammad Ali on social media, we see him on television, etc. But what was he like at home as a person that people may not have seen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, my dad, he was a busy man. He's been married 4 times. So he had a lot of wives. And he had, out of those marriages, he had 9 children altogether.
Right.
So all of us had an opportunity, and some more than others, because my dad, ever since when I was born, my dad was carving out his brand, carving out his career, facing a lot of opposition from the government at that time. He was exiled at the time that we were born. So he was doing a lot with his life at that time and going through a lot. So some of us had a lot more time to spend with him, but the times that we did spend with him, especially as adults, when we understood what he meant to the world, he was the same person as you know of him, and people see. And back then, people didn't really have internet, and they didn't really have online presence. So my dad organically became this global figure via newspapers, old school way, and the radio. So the people that knew my dad growing up, watching him grow, he was that same person even at home with us as kids.
So he was disciplined. So he was disciplined in a way.
No, he didn't discipline us at all.
Right.
No, he was, as a person and as a professional, he was highly disciplined.
Right.
But he did not discipline his kids at all. He was he took it easy. He really was easy.
Right.
So you'll see that my mom was the disciplinarian, and my grandpa, who I grew up with, and my grandmother, they were more disciplinarians. My dad let us walk all over him because,
fair enough.
He was pretty easy and laid back as a father. He let us do whatever we wanted.
Maybe that was because he was also tough in the ring. Going home, he just wanted to be gentle. maybe that was the
That
idea.
could be it. Or he couldn't tell his daughters no.
Right.
Because he was so nice.
Right.
But he did lead by example. So as kids, as we watched him and his interaction with other people, we saw that he was such a kind human being. And I think a lot of that, he taught us to be that kind, beautiful, caring, compassionate, loving human being, because we saw that's how he treated his fans. That's how he treated his managers. That's how he treated the waiters, the people that cleaned his hotel rooms, every single person from kings to queens to the waiters or the janitors. He treated everyone the same.
Very humble man. Very humble man.
Very humble. And I think my dad wanted to show us that that's how you're supposed to lead your life. You're supposed to give back, and you're supposed to show love and compassion. And he did that for us. He showed us that through his examples.
Now, in terms of obviously, carrying the name Ali, now, Muhammad Ali's daughter is one thing, but carrying the name, what do you call it, in some sort, gives you a responsibility to carry in the status of what he's carried in. Does that give you an understanding that when you do go out in public, when you do go to these press conferences, when you do go to these boxing events, that the status always has to be high?
That's a very good question, and it's very true. The answer is yes. Even when we were young kids, my grandparents, we grew up Muslim. My grandparents were very strict Muslim. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. You're a Muslim brother.
I am Muslim. Alhamdulillah.
Salam alaikum. I didn't know that. Hannah should have told me that. Salam alaikum, brother.
Absolutely.
So my grandparents taught us to honor ourselves as Muslim, especially women. It was hard enough in the 80s growing up as Muslim women, but we had to carry ourselves first and foremost as Muslim women, but also we had to carry ourselves as Muhammad Ali's children. And so that even had a harder, more challenging requirement, because we were always on stage, if that makes any sense. People were always looking at us, and they're always judging us, and they're always wondering what we're going to do, because my grandparents taught us at a very young age that when you're in public, you're not just Rasheda. You're Rasheda, titled Muhammad Ali's daughter.
Of course, you have to. There's a status, and there's a behavior that you have to follow. Of course,
absolutely. And I think it was important. And one of the things I think my dad did, of course, my dad and my mom divorced when we were very young. So unfortunately, we didn't have them in our lives when we were very young, because he was not only carving out his career as a boxer, as a human rights activist, as a humanitarian, as a man, but he was a global figure, and we couldn't be there with him all the time. So my grandparents took on that responsibility after the divorce. And it was really tough for them, I think, because losing our parents at that young age, but also having this big responsibility to carry. I think we found it difficult, and I want to speak for myself. I thought it was difficult to have all of these stipulations put on us. At times, I kind of rebelled, because I felt like, this is too much. I can't handle it.
Sure.
But I understood it later on as I became a young woman. And as I matured too, I felt it was a badge of honor later.
Sure.
And even though it was still difficult, it's still difficult. It's more of a badge of honor, and it is a challenge for all of us to try to carry the example that my dad carried, like my grandparents as well. They had huge. Played a large role in our lives. And I think they did an excellent job, and so did my father.
Absolutely. I mean, the world mourned your father. Let's just be honest. When your father passed away and he had Parkinson's disease, it was really tough for everyone. It wasn't just tough for the family, but it was tough for, people around the world. They didn't want to accept it in a way. I remember people kept saying, it can be cured. He'll be fine. He's a strong man. But when it got more and more serious. So my question is, when you started to realize that when his Parkinson's disease was declining downwards more and more, what was your thoughts in that, and how did your family come together in terms of uniting together?
Well, the good thing is that we communicated from the time my dad was diagnosed in 84. So I was 14 years old at the time. I just started high school. Maybe I was in junior high. I was very young. I didn't grasp what this condition will long term do for my father. And so we were learning as we were going along. And in the early 80s, at that time, the neurocognitive experts and the neurologists, they didn't know really, at least the team that we were exposed to did not know that my dad even had Parkinson's until, so he was misdiagnosed for many years.
Right.
Because my dad, according to the neurology world, my dad was too young to have this neurocognitive disease that normally people at an older age will contract. So he was trying to figure it out, going from doctor to neurologist to a neurologist. And when he was finally diagnosed in 84, we had to grasp what that meant.
Yeah.
And what that was going to look like long term. And we didn't know what that was going to look like. But my dad had this really amazing aura about him. He had this attitude about him. And he taught us about this too. I'm still learning how to be as good as he was. My dad didn't let things bother him.
Good.
My dad said, Alhamdulillah upon all conditions, before I understood what that really meant. And so he helped us, in a sense, grasp what this condition means, because mentally he took it all in his stride.
Sure.
He didn't worry about anything. And he thought that God didn't make any mistakes in terms of being able to give someone something that they did not ask for.
Right.
He knew there was a reason behind it. So my dad taught us the way he kind of dealt with the condition. He taught us not to worry about it because he didn't worry about it.
Right. Now, also your father, Muhammad, his first name was called Cassius Clay, and he went through, let's just be honest and direct and straight, the world is actually very racist in terms of even now in the world of 2026. But when he was around, it was very hard for him. I mean, it must have been much harder because the world wasn't really accepting black and Asian people like myself, people like yourself. Even now these days, especially in America and the UK, especially we're going to have the Reform political party. The world is not settled, and it's more hurtful. Your father went through a hell of a lot of racism. They didn't want to accept his name, Muhammed Ali. They didn't want to accept that he was a Muslim. They didn't want to accept. They wanted to use his name. What was it like what was it like when the stories he told you in terms of him growing up being in a racist environment?
Well, my dad grew up in the Jim Crow South. So he grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. So at that time,
It's tough.
Growing up in the 50s, my dad, he thought that going into the Olympics and representing his country would somehow be a little easier on him. He thought that maybe he could come back to Louisville because he was so proud to be a young boy from Louisville. And he was so proud to say, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and represent the United States at the Olympics. And he thought, I think, that at that point, since there was segregation and mass segregation going on, especially in the South where he was from and he grew up, he thought maybe it might be a little different. But after he received the gold medal from the 1960 Rome Olympics, he thought maybe he can go into a diner and get a cheeseburger. And he couldn't. And that bothered him because he thought that maybe now that I'm a gold medalist, I can do these things and I can help my people be treated a little bit kinder.
Absolutely.
And that didn't happen. And so that's one reason why my dad threw his medal into the Ohio River, because he felt, what is this medal going to do for me and my people? Because my dad always did things for others. He didn't just do things for himself. Yes, he wanted to win the gold medal. Of course, that was something that all athletes wanted. But his higher thinking was, I'm given this gift, and what am I going to do with it? So his whole purpose was to give back to the people who were disenfranchised and those who were oppressed. So he was quite disappointed that he couldn't really go into a restaurant and drink from the same fountain as his white counterparts.
But that even happens now. I mean, in terms of the lack of diversity in terms of racism now in this world.
Yeah.
I mean, especially I come from an Asian background. I know what it's like also being a Muslim as well, having a brown skin. Regardless if you're British or not, let's just be honest and straight. Let's just be straight. But regardless how intelligent you are, people judge you on the basis of your skin color. And that's what we have today. People like George Floyd. We've also had Rodney King, etc. Now, if your father was around and he knew about, let's just say, for instance, George Floyd. I mean, when he was growing up, racism and beatings were very normal back in them days. But if he knew about the George Floyd situation, what do you think he would have said?
Well, I will say that when my dad was a young boy, probably around 12 or 13 years old, what inspired my dad to, and I'm going back, what inspired him to really come to grips with what was going on in this country. Emmett Till was the boy that inspired him to wear the civil rights crown and carry on that responsibility, because he and Emmett Till were around the same age. When Emmett Till was lynched, he was devastated, and I think my dad was so disturbed by that. He felt that he needed to do something to raise awareness for what's going on with Black and brown people in this country. People like George Floyd and so many others who have been wrongfully killed and lynched and completely obliterated. My dad spoke really strong about hate, and he really, really pressed unity and inclusion. And my dad did that until the day he died. My dad was very disappointed after 9/11 and how the Islamophobia, I never lived in a universe where Islamophobia did not exist. It's always going to be there now, and it's be there when I leave this earth.
Of course.
So that's never going to end. But my dad felt it necessary while he was here on this earth to educate people about discrimination, especially those who, Islamophobia was big after 9/11. Everybody hated Muslims.
Sure.
And Dad made it a point to, there was a telethon that was going on trying to raise awareness about Muslims. And my dad, even with Parkinson's in the 90s, he didn't speak that well, but he felt it very important to go on national television to let people know that Islam is not a religion of hate and division. It is a religion of peace and love. And I think a lot of Americans did not know that. They just are kind of listening to what they're fed on the telly. And
even now, Rashida, we still get stereotyped because I'm a man who's got a beard, and apparently if I go on the London Tube, I'm classified as a terrorist,
Of course, and I used to get stopped all the time because my last name is Ali. So that's not going to go away. But I think I'll be honest with you. I think it's gotten worse because I think I don't know about what is going on in Europe, but I know in our country, Islamophobia has gotten worse because we have a president who's a dictator, and he's actually condoning this bad behavior. It's unfortunate. I think my dad would have been mortified to see where this country has gone, at least in America. And I think we're going backwards. We're going back 50 years to where, like my dad, when he struggled with racism, I think, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm experiencing, I can't say I'm experiencing the same racism my dad did, but we are experiencing some major setbacks where we thought by 2026 that some of this racism antics would be gone, but it looks like they're returning, and that's unfortunately, they never left.
Now, in terms of Trump, as you said, the president, dictator, etc., when you say you feel and you say you see it and you feel that the America has gone backwards in the 1950s, 60s, what do you feel exactly? What do you see in terms of people's emotions? Are you talking about how people behave towards you, neighbors, etc.?
I don't think it's just me in particular. I think it's all Black and brown people across the United States, all Muslims. They're receiving, mosques are being, burned, blown up. Muslims are being terrorized in their neighborhoods. Black and brown people are being stopped. ICE is going on where people are being deported because they're brown, or they speak broken English. They're being, harassed, and they're given people like law enforcement and ICE officers and things like that. They're given free reign to be able to target black and brown people, anyone that just doesn't look like them.
Mexicans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a horrible thing. And I think my dad and other people like him, like Malcolm X and like Martin Luther King, who fought, and a lot of people died so that we can receive freedoms in this country. And I think they would all be mortified to see where our country has gone.
No, absolutely. Now, I also want to talk to you about AI. The reason why I ask you this is because AI is a thing where people say it's very dangerous, and also the same people also say it's very positive. Now, first of all, what's your perspective on AI at the moment, and also your children? Because obviously, having Nico Ali Rush, who's your son, who's done fantastic as a boxer, really shows the way that he's got his grandfather's, his behavior, mannerisms, etc. in and outside the ring. AI for you, are you pro AI? Are you against AI?
I'm pro AI, but I do realize I do understand for people that I also believe that it could be potentially dangerous if it's not monitored. I think AI is an extremely powerful resource for people like me. I just created. I had a book on Parkinson's. Back in 2005, my dad and my children helped me write it. I just revised my book, and AI kind of helped me put together some really cool, photos and just thoughts in my mind. And I think it could be a very useful tool. Even when I send text messages and emails, I say, hey, you know what? I want to say it this way. And AI has helped me kind of form words and adjectives. So from a business perspective, and even just as a woman who, I'm on my computer a lot, I communicate with a lot of people. I think it's a really good tool in that sense.
Sure.
But if it's not monitored, AI can be very dangerous. And I do see AI becoming a tool for a lot of hackers and a tool for a lot of criminals out there who are trying to get access to little children, and the way they game and the way they go online and communicate. AI has been a hacker's dream in terms of being able to get access to children and younger people who can't tell the difference from this person who's trying to get access to your home or their parents. And so I think it needs to be monitored. I think it's grown so fast. I think that the powers that be can't control it. And I think once we get to a point where it can be monitored and used safely for all of us, I think it could be a good thing moving forward.
Absolutely. Now, I want to take you on a bit of a journey in terms of your father. I want to previously just go back into your father, because your father is obviously a legend. In terms of your father now, when he had Parkinson's disease, and from our reports, it seems from other people that when you're a celebrity and you're a boxer, and yes, you have managers, yes, you have PR people, yes, you have people that will advise you. Some people advise you the right way, some people advise you the wrong way. There were things in his health that he was obviously declining, and people around him's team, I don't know if they could see it, either they're blind or they just didn't want to notice. Do you think your father was ill-advised at some point at the end of his career, that people just wanted him in terms of money at the end and said, right, no, just have this next fight, but they knew his health was declining? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the answer, I believe, is yes. I think there are a lot of members of this team that just wanted him to fight, and they were like, no, you can do one more, because they were benefiting. There were a lot of his physicians that told him, hey, I think you need to scale back. And even, my dad, he was one of the rare fighters where, you look at him since 12 years old, most fighters didn't have 30 years in the ring. I mean, most of them are like, hey, they're in and out for whatever reason. My dad loved the sport so much. But I think my dad really he loved it, but I think he was more pushed, in my opinion.
Manipulated.
I think so. My dad was a nice man, and he was manipulated, and he was so kind. A lot of people took advantage of his kindness. A lot of the doctors told him that he really should stop, and some commissions even did not allow my dad to fight later on in the 80s, where my dad was still trying to fight. I think one of the commission
because they realized.
yeah, because they thought he was older. He was exhibiting some. He didn't pass physical exams. So some commissioners, I believe one of the commissioners here in Las Vegas said, "No, you're not fighting here." So some of them were responsible and kind of said no, but then some commissions said yes, it was fine. So my dad went wherever he could fight, but a lot of his managers at that time, they benefited from him continuing to fight.
So basically, in other words, their safeguarding towards him and his protection was him wasn't their priority.
No.
No.
But my dad always said I didn't really have any friends. A lot of people, if you knew him, everybody had their hands out like this. Everyone around him. So
do you find it hard to trust? Do you find it hard to trust people knowing that you are also the status of the daughter of Muhammad Ali? Do you find it hard to make friends? Trust people, etc. In your position?
Yeah, I mean, if you can ask my kids, they'll say I'm completely paranoid. And I've made them the same. I just want them to be, I want them to be safe. And because I knew as a young girl that I never was going to know the truth. And I told my kids when they were very young that you'll never know the truth. And the reason why I say that is because once people find out who you are, then you don't even know what their true intentions are, and you won't. I just wanted not to make them paranoid, but I just wanted to let them know the reality is that you really can't trust everyone. And, my dad was taken advantage of his whole entire life. Even after he retired from boxing, he was still being taken advantage of many people. And even though it's close, promoters. Yeah, promoters, even his wives. I mean, there were a lot of people just took advantage of my father. And because he was a kind person. And I think one of the reasons that my dad, sometimes he knew what was going on, but he just thought, no, they would never do that. They would never do that. Because my dad didn't see the evil in people. He always saw the good in people.
Yeah, sure.
And so that was frustrating for me to watch, especially as I got older. And me and my dad's relationship got better and better. I started to see that he wasn't always around people that had his best interests at heart.
No, fair enough. I understand. Now, in terms of what's your perspective on the latest boxers today? People like Mike Tyson, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. You got Usyk. You got Daniel Dubois. You've got some great boxers out there. Do you think? I mean, it's very hard to compare them compared to your father, but in terms of their skills, I mean, I know Nico, your son, does the shuffle boxing dance very, very well. And when he beats them, I mean, he's on a track.
Yes.
So do you think, in your perspective, the current boxers of today have a good high standard? The good stability, and also your son as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think my son Nico and my oldest son, he's a combat sports. He's a mixed martial artist. So they're both really trying to carry on their grandpa's legacy in the ring, in the combat sports world. And I think they're doing a very good job, not so much in the smart cage and in the ring, but they're also outside of the ring. They're trying to duplicate my dad's kindness and paying it forth the way my dad did. I do think that boxing today is very exciting. I love watching. I'm a huge Usyk fan. I love watching Tyson Fury. I love watching, Bud Crawford. The Mexican Monster is amazing. Tank. These are great fighters, and they're very interesting to watch. And I can't compare any of these fighters to my dad, even like Canelo, who I absolutely love. He's amazing. But I don't think no fighter today will compare themselves to Muhammad Ali, except probably Floyd Mayweather.
And what do you think of Mike Tyson?
I think he was in his day. Mike was there was no one scarier than Mike Tyson.
Very scary.
I mean,
very scary.
He was terrifying. Everybody was terrified of him, and in his day, he was just incredible. He had zero fear, and he really had the mentality that a true boxer should have. You should go in the ring saying, "I am going to win, and there's no one can beat me." That's how you're supposed to think. as a boxer. And even as an MMA fighter, you're supposed to think you have that level of confidence, and I think Mike had that.
Absolutely. Now, my last couple of questions to you, Rasheda. Now, in terms of your son, Nico, who really is following your grandfather's footsteps, what's his next? What's his next? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, what's his next? What's his next? Actually, you know what? Before I go into that, mental health is very important. Mental
Yes, it
health
is.
is very important. You know, you're going into a combat sport. You have the pressure, you have the media, you have the fans, you have the press all around you. You know, they criticize you. You know, press are never. Sometimes they're not nice. Sometimes they are. How do you and your family deal with mental health?
I think that's a very good question. My kids started. Nico started boxing at 14. He's considered a late bloomer when you consider other fighters who started when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And one of the reasons is because I don't know if Nico really at a young age he liked boxing, but I don't think he really showed interest until probably 14.
Sure.
My oldest son, who's just about 22 months older than Nico, he played football, and we didn't allow him to play tackle football until high school because with our experience with Parkinson's, with Daddy, watching him go through what he went through in his career. So we tried to. We weren't the kind of parents, and it's fine. Every parent's different. We weren't the kind of parents that said, no, you can't box, you can't play football. I wasn't that kind of parent. I just was the kind of parent where my husband and I, we supported their careers, but we had health at the forefront. So we made sure they had baseline concussion testing early on in their careers, like in high school. And we constantly, when things concerned us, we went to go see a neurologist, and we tried to be responsible as we could potentially be.
Yeah.
Fortunately, boxing is a lot safer than it was when my dad fought. Of course, they reduced the number of rounds because of the impact on the fighter. But what we try to explore, and we want them to live their dream. We want them to enjoy their lives, but we want to make sure that mental health is very important and is a focal point of all of our lives, including our kids who are both combat sports and boxers.
Absolutely. And my last question to you, in terms of your father, now you and Hannah are the closest to anyone will be able to get a story to understand in terms of your father. What's one memory that you have? One great memory that you've had, or maybe strict memory, maybe when he was at home, etc. I don't know. Something that people haven't known about your father before. One memory that you've never shared before that would love the people around and the Muhammad Ali fans would love to know about.
My dad was first of all, I have so many. I'm just trying to think of how do I narrow it down to one. But one comes to mind. A lot of people, because my dad was really good at confidence and at knowing. He always said he was the greatest before he even knew that he was the greatest. He actually lived being a great boxer, and he manifested. He was one of those individuals where he manifested his career through his thoughts, and I do believe that it really worked. My dad was an extremely positive person, but his faith kind of made him the kind of person that he is. So a lot of people get strong convictions, but his faith that Islam made him fearless, and Islam gave him the confidence to tackle a lot of the racism issues that we talked about earlier.
Huge
growing
racism.
up. It's pure in its worst form. He experienced death threats, including my family experienced death threats as well during that time. But our faith has helped my dad through all of those challenges.
Sure.
A lot of people knew my dad had confidence, but when he was at home watching TV, my dad was very humble. So we would, one time, there's two occasions. One time I was getting ready to do a book tour. I was promoting my book on Parkinson's, and I was going to Australia. And I called my dad and said, Daddy, I'm going to Australia and I'm going to promote the book, because my dad helped me write it. He wrote the foreword, and my kids helped me write this children's book to help people understand the disease. And so my dad said, oh, that's great. Do they know me in Australia? I said, what? I said, Daddy. I said, of course. I said, Astaghfirullah, Daddy, everybody knows who you are.
Of course.
I said, look, we were in South Africa, and there were people who lived in little huts. They didn't speak any English, but when somebody said Muhammad Ali, they went like this. I said,
Exactly.
Daddy, everybody knows it. And he was shocked. He was like, really? I said, Daddy, Australia?
Come on.
I said, come on, man. I said, and then he said, oh, okay. And I thought he was joking with me, but he had a serious expression. I'm like, Daddy, are you serious? But he really was humble. But he thought he was just the average person.
Impossible for him ever be that person.
I totally agree with you. But we were watching. My dad really loved watching his old fights, and I'd put on an old fight when he was Cassius Clay, and I'd say, Daddy, and he put it on, watch the whole fight, and then he'd look at me, after the fight or whatever. He looked at me, he's like, I was a bad man, wasn't I? I said, what was? I said, you mean is. That's how humble he was. And I think a lot of people didn't realize as confident that he was and how he really believed that he was the greatest.
But he was also very gentle at home, very gentle and humble at home.
He was very gentle, and he really thought that, maybe everyone did not know who he was. And so he didn't think he was bigger then he's supposed to show his opponents that he was bigger than life. But at home, he just was like, does people really know me? Am I really that big? And was I bad? I said, yeah, he had to be reminded. But that's how he treated people, like he wasn't this magnificent force. He treated people like he was a normal human being. And I think he used his power and his resources to be able to help people feel good about themselves. And I think that's why he meant so many things to so many people.
Absolutely. Well, Rasheda, I really want to say thank you so much for coming on today. It really was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And thank you so much for all the support. And also at the same time, congratulations on, your father, just even though he's not here today, that he's, spiritually with you, and also at the same time with your family, and also your son. Your father's legacy has been brought through your son and the way he performs in the boxing ring. So really good luck with all your success with your family, and alhamdulillah, everything will be fine moving forward.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you so much, Rasheda, for your time. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.